RTA stands for Royal Tiger Imports. Going through the warehouses, we found a lot of World War I era firearms, and I also wondered how did they end up in Ethiopia. So basically we have a lot of, not a lot, but we got some German firearms, some Gewehr 98s, which clearly were German vintage and served during World War I. But then they had some Belgian or British markings on these guns. And of course, they had the Lion of Judah. So I can only imagine that basically the victors of World War I, took these German guns and kind of recycled them, inspected them, put them back to field grade, and then, just put their markings on there and sold them to Emperor Menelik in Ethiopia. And that's why they stamped on the Lion of Judah onto the barrel or the receiver. So that's an interesting firearm. Then we got a lot of World War I vintage #1 Mark IIIs as well in this shipment. And interesting part is the Austrian guns, the Steyr-Mannlicher. So we have a lot of M95 and M95 carbines in the shipment, and they have different calibers. So we have the original 8x50, and then later on some modified guns which were modified to 8x56. But both calibers were in the shipment, and as a military firearm, I don't understand how they managed the ammunition, because these are two different ammunition. They had so many guns in their warehouses, so it must have been a logistical nightmare to keep up with the ammunition for the different firearms. So the guns look the same. One has an S on there, which is clearly marks it's an 8x56, and the other one has no S on it, and it's an 8x50. So that's the interesting part on these guns. So the Austrian guns, they ended up there after World War I as well. And then, back in 1920s, in early 1930s, Emperor Menelik looked also to get some more modern guns. So he had a contract with Belgium, with FN, and he purchased a large number of FN rifles, the model 1924, as a short rifle and also as a standard long rifle, and the model 1930, which is basically a carbine. Another interesting story is we found a lot of standard Mauthers and Mauther model 1933 in Ethiopia. And another interesting part is that actually the Chancellor of the German Reich, Adolf Hitler, in 1934, gave Emperor Menelik a grant. So the Germans basically sent down their brand new production standard Mauthers, model 1934 and model 1933, with a beautiful imperial kind of crest on the receiver down to Ethiopia. So we found some of them, and they're really, really nice, and of course they're very rare because not many were made. So you have the Belgian guns, which are the Belgian Mauthers, you have the German Mauthers coming to Ethiopia back to the 1936 or 37, when the Italians invaded Abyssinia basically. They did air attacks on Addis Ababa, they used some poison gas and so on and so forth. But in the end, they ended up basically conquering Ethiopia or Abyssinia for a few years, and still, you see everywhere today in Ethiopia Italian buildings. It's amazing, they'll stay at the area in Addis, and it's surrounded by old Italian buildings. So the Italians did nothing but build roads, bridges, and buildings in Ethiopia. And it's only the short time, 4 or 5 years, when they occupied Ethiopia. Very interesting history. And of course, the Battle of Gondar, which was in 1941, and somewhere in December, I think, that was a big battle where the Ethiopians basically pushed the Italians out of Ethiopia with the help from the British. So you have, the few years of Italian occupation, the few years and basically when the British helped to kick the Italians out of Ethiopia, and of course, interesting firearms. So you have a lot of Vetali guns which were converted for the 6.5 cartridge, and again, they're antiques, but you can shoot them with a reduced load, the 6.5 Carcano. You have a lot of guns which were used by the Italian army, which have on the stock a little stamp. It says AOI, which stands for Army Orientale Italiana, which was the East African Italian Army. So I've seen stamps on German guns, on Gewehr 98s, on a lot of Mannlicher rifles. But history, folks, amazing, absolutely amazing. If you're a firearms enthusiast, if you're a historian, and you research it, it's amazing about the alliances, the different suppliers during that time. Yeah, the history makes my job a fun job, finding all these historical treasures and bringing them home to the US.